Mill invited her husband's ex-girlfriend to every family event to prove that he made a mistake. Things came to a head when her husband had enough at Mill's birthday party and banned her from our lives. So here's the background. I married my husband Sean when I was 28 and we've been married for 2 years. Sean and I dated for 2 years before we got married, but we had known each other for several years since high school. We didn't start dating until a few years after college. We exchanged phone numbers at a restaurant, went on a few dates, and that's how we got together. Almost 4 years later, before me, Sean was dating another high school girl named Diane, a year below us, who had been with Sean since middle school. I was not close to him, but we had a lot of friends in common from school, so after high school I often saw him with Diane. Later I lost contact with him because he went to another state and we rarely met at that time. Until a few years later we finally met at a restaurant and I asked about Diane. He told me that they broke up a year and a half ago, and she dumped him because she wanted a different life and wanted to take a break, explore the world, but she would come back to him one day. It just meant that she wanted to be single for a while and see other guys, but hoped that Sean would stay around as an option, so that after the breakup he could remain friends with her, but minimize contact with her. By the time he met me, he had almost completely moved on from Diane, and I started to see him in a new light because he had grown up a lot since the last time we had met in high school. Sean and I became friends quickly and easily 4 years ago, and even now we still maintain a relaxed, laid-back relationship. He says that he never had that kind of relationship with Diane, who always tried to make him woo her because she thought it would make her more attractive. She would flirt with other men sometimes, hang out with friends a lot, not speak to him for days, and never care what Sean thought of her behavior. He stayed with her because he was young and stupid, and because he thought he needed to make the relationship work, only because they had been together for a long time. Another reason was his mother, who was a big fan of Diane's. Diane had met Sharon, my mother-in-law, many times when she was with Sharon, and every time Diane visited Sharon, Sharon would praise her and act like a completely different person. If Sean is to be believed, Diane used to do the same thing to Sharon, praising her endlessly and acting like a completely different person to impress her. They would chat about other people, mainly Shaw's other female friends, who he didn't like, and sometimes even Sean's aunts and cousins. Diane was considered to be a traditional beauty, which meant that Sharon preferred her. I don't understand why this is the case, but it is. Sean told me that even after they broke up, Sharon continued to invite Diane to family events and holiday dinners. He tried to convince his mother to stop inviting her, but she claimed that she really liked her and that even though they had broken up, she and Diane were still friends, so she saw no problem inviting her. They talked almost every other week, and they were actually very good friends even after I started dating Sean and he introduced me to his family. At first I found it very strange, and I still do, but I have had reason to put up with it for a long time. The first time Sean brought me home to meet his family was at Christmas, and we had been dating for a while, almost 8 months. Diane was there and she was very mean to me the whole time, picking on my looks, my height, my clothes, my makeup, etc. She was clever, talking with a great sense of humor, as if she was joking, but Sean knew what she was trying to do and tried to defend me. But Sharon stopped her and asked me directly if I was embarrassed by Diane's jokes. I knew that if I showed that I was upset, they would say that I was insecure or something, which would make me even more embarrassed, so I decided to be tough and say that I didn't care. It was childish of me to do so, but when I said that, I saw their faces of surprise and anger, and I knew that I had done the right thing. When Sean and I got home, he apologized to me, apologized for Sharon and Diane's behavior, and told me he would make sure his mother didn't invite Diane again, but I told him not to do that. I know what kind of people they are and I don't want to lose to them. If you understand what I mean, I don't want them to think that they intimidate me or make me feel insecure, because they don't. I feel like I have to prove that. So I also explained this to Sean, and he was surprised by my opinion, but after that day he stopped interfering. So far, Diane has attended every family gathering hosted by Sharon, and every time they have mocked me, given me sarcastic compliments, or kept bringing up Diane and Sean's past, even when it was unnecessary, just to embarrass me. I faced it all with courage and tried to remain calm. Sharon even mentioned several times that she preferred a daughter-in-law like Diane, and that she was more suitable to be Sean's wife. Although it was annoying, I tried to remain calm because as long as Sean was by my side, I didn't care what they said. Letting Sharon and Diane argue endlessly had no effect on me. I have handled it this way for the past 4 years, and I intend to maintain the same attitude for the next 4 years. 2. I will not be the first to crack, that's for sure. Now let's talk about what really happened that led me here. 3 days ago, Sharon celebrated her 49th birthday, which she does every year with all her family and friends. This year Sean didn't want to go but to a colleague's engagement party which happened to be on the same day, and for good reason because his colleague will only be engaged once and he is very close to him. But Sharon forced him to promise to attend her birthday party, and a few days later he gave in, so we decided to go to that party, just like any other event. Diane was also invited and she dressed up, and for some reason even Sharon dressed up, but at least it was her birthday, and we were all there to celebrate. Sean and I decided to leave after Sharon cut the cake and go to the engagement party. So at about 5:30 p.m. my father-in-law took out the cake, and we were surprised to see that there were 2 cakes, because one of them said happy anniversary. Sean and I didn't know what the other cake meant, and neither did anyone else, so we waited for the birthday girl to explain. It turned out that Diane had taken over. Surprised, she grabbed Sean's arm and made him stand next to her. We were all stunned and didn't know what to do, because he had suddenly been thrust into the spotlight and everyone was looking at him. Then Diane started talking, explaining that about 10 years ago, on Sharon's birthday, Sean had gotten down on one knee and given her a promise ring, because they were both 18 and were going to different universities in a few months. She was still wearing the ring, and even proudly showed it to everyone present. Then she awkwardly hugged Sean, but he didn't respond. Sharon was cheering them on from the sidelines, saying that this time she was willing to let them steal the show, and let them celebrate what could have been. It was ridiculous. Sean and I just stood there, mouths agape like the rest of the guests, for several minutes without saying anything. None of us knew what to say in response to such a crazy thing. Diane continued the joke, saying that Sean was almost her husband and Sharon was almost her mother-in-law. So this was their quasi-anniversary. We didn't seem to get the joke, and Sharon cut the so-called anniversary cake and fed it to Sean. She fed it to Diane first and then tried to feed it to Sean, but I think he came to his senses and stepped away from his mother. He backed away when his mother brought the slice of cake close to his mouth. She was surprised by this and asked him what was wrong. When she asked this, everything spiraled out of control. Sean started shouting at her and Diane, accusing them of what they had done. He tore the cake apart, finally letting out years of pent-up anger. He called them both shallow, stupid, selfish, and even delusional. He said that he had dated Diane even though he was involved with Sharon, and that in fact Sharon was related to him by blood because they were the 2 worst women he had ever met. I admit that even I was shocked by his outburst because Sean is usually a very calm person who rarely yells or gets angry with others, and only does so when he is pushed to the limit. Of course, after Sean had yelled at them, Sharon finally did it with Diane's help. After that, he left the party in a rage and took a taxi with me to his colleague's house. In the car I tried to talk to him, but he was obviously very upset and said he didn't want to talk about his mother and ex-wife, so I gave up at that time. After arriving at the destination, his mood seemed to have improved, because he met his friends and other colleagues. I was relieved to see that he seemed much better that day. When we got home, his mood had clearly improved, and I decided to bring up the party again because I thought he wanted to talk about it. But instead, he just vented his anger at me, saying that I was partly responsible for what happened. When I brought up the party, he told me that he did agree with Sharon and Diane that they were trying to humiliate me with the cake, but that I was also innocent. For years, I had forced him to remain silent and let Sharon and Diane do whatever they wanted at these events because I had to prove to them that I didn't care. I was so focused on myself and on showing people how cool I was, that I completely forgot that Sean was just as involved in this as I was, and it made him feel uneasy. Sharon, Diane, and I were playing mind games against each other, but he was the one suffering, and no one cared about him or how he felt about all of this. He didn't expect this from his mother or his ex-wife, but he did expect me to understand him. He said I'd let him down a little because I'd put my feelings before his. I argued with him that night, telling him that he'd been too harsh and unfair with me, but now I calmly look back on it calmly, and I do think he had a point. I'd have forced my husband to remain silent for years, while his mother belittled me by inviting his ex-wife to family events. Update. Okay, so I apologized to Sean tonight. I read the comments, did a lot of reflecting, and talked to a few friends about it, and came to the conclusion that I was wrong and that everything he said that day was true. I've been so focused on my own feelings and playing the roles of Diane and Sharon that I've pretended like their behavior didn't bother me, and I didn't even stop to think that maybe it bothered Sean, so for his sake I should at least let him end it. I let him put his feelings aside for years so that I could win some sick mind games with guys I didn't even like. And in doing so, I endangered what was most important to me. I screwed up, so I know I have to make it right. From the day of the party, Sean has been cold to me, and I've been trying to act like it doesn't bother me. I've always had this problem, and it's always been a problem because my reaction is always to pretend that things don't bother me, even when they do. I want to be seen as someone who is unruffled and unmoved by anything, so I put on a show of nonchalance and suppress my feelings. Now I realize that this is really an unhealthy coping mechanism, and I definitely need to work on it if I want to keep my marriage together. But today I took the day off and decided to go to his favorite place and buy him dinner. And I also bought a chocolate cake with the word sorry printed on it. When I got home, I set everything up and made it as romantic as possible, because I knew he likes sentimental romantic comedies with apologies. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean for him to go through all this. He came home in the evening after work and was very surprised to see everything I had set up for him. He forgave me within 15 minutes of arriving home. We reconciled in tears, and in the end I cried because I was so afraid I would lose him. We talked when he stopped talking to me, and now we have an even better relationship because I admitted my mistake. I explained to him that I had always wanted to seem calm, laid back and unhurried, and that there was basically no reason for this, except that it just looked cool, and I didn't want to show any vulnerability in front of other people. That was the real reason for all the confusion. He understood and respected the way I had admitted my mistake, and said that I would try to change instead of bottling everything up and keeping my feelings to myself. He also was rude to me, but I don't think he needs to apologize. He did it because he is a good person and because he loves me, which really made me feel like I won. After dinner, we finally talked about what had happened with Diane and Sharon the other day. After the party, I had a fight with Sean and I never heard from them again, so I had already put it out of my mind. However, Sharon had been texting him, telling him to apologize to Diane, who was supposedly inconsolable over Sean's behavior. I had to fight back tears when I read Sharon's text to her husband. Sharon tried to make the cake and the prank on almost their entire anniversary seem like just a joke and that they weren't implying anything, but I call BS. We're talking about a married man who surely had enough sense to realize how inappropriate and disrespectful this was to me. They did it because they wanted to humiliate me at the party, so they can't say it was just a joke. Sean went too far, even daring to imply that Sean and I went too far, which is disrespectful, and then it was just ridiculous when we left. Anyway, Sean has been ignoring her texts, and after seeing them today, we decided to cut off contact with her. We've had enough of her nonsense and don't want to get involved anymore. Update 2-3 days ago, Sean and I blocked Sharon and Diane's accounts on all our social media, and he told his father that he didn't want to speak to his mother anymore. His father respected this because he understood how Sean felt, but he also refused to intervene now because he also loved his wife and knew he couldn't leave her, so he stayed completely out of it, as he had for the past few years. I didn't agree with my father-in-law's actions, but there was nothing I could do about it. Everything had been going well for the past 2 days, but today Sean suddenly called me and said he had to go to the hospital as soon as possible because his mother had fallen down the stairs and broken her leg. His uncle had informed him, and he had set off as soon as he heard the news, as had I. When we arrived at the hospital, his uncle also mentioned this, but before we even got in the door, Sharon stopped us. She was completely fine. She and Diane had ambushed us in the hospital parking lot and told us that this was the only way to get Sean's attention, because he was blocking them everywhere. My appearance caught them by surprise, but they just ignored me and continued to talk to Sean normally, as if they hadn't done anything wrong. Dean tried to explain to him that what she did at the party was just a prank, and that she didn't mean to offend him. Sharon supported her claim. Sean listened for a while, then told his mom and ex to fuck off, walked straight past the shocked faces and walked off with me again. As we tried to get into our respective cars, Sharon started screaming at us, but we didn't wait for her to finish. I'm sure she was cursing us, but it didn't matter because she lied to be able to see Sean again, and I can't imagine anything more manipulative. Sean came home from the hospital because he was stressed, but I had to go back to work. While I was working, I got a text from an unfamiliar number, from Sean's mother. She yelled at me for 15 whole seconds before I managed to hang up. I was caught off guard at work, otherwise I would never have answered the phone. But she yelled at me, and all I heard was her swearing at the top of her lungs. I don't know why she's mad at me because of the way Sean and I acted. She's driven her son to this, but not me anyway. I blocked her and tried to get on with my life. Finally, when I got home around 6, I was able to talk to Sean, and he told me that he would also block other relatives who are close to his mother, as well as his uncles, because it is now clear that she will stop at nothing to get him to forgive them. This is the only thing we can do for now because they are not threatening us in any way, nor are they stalking us or doing anything else, so it is impossible to apply for a restraining order anyway. Sean has already spoken to his father about what happened today, but he still refuses to intervene. It's his choice. Sean loves his father, so I'm not saying anything at the moment, but I think my father-in-law is acting as a great example of being a good father. Either the least he can do is at least talk to his wife and stand up for his son, but he refuses to do even that much. Sean loves his father, but the man has never once stood up for him when it comes to Sharon, and I've only kept my mouth shut out of respect for their relationship, or else I'd have a lot to say about how his entire family is just ridiculously stupid people who don't think about anything but themselves. How can someone like Sean be a part of such a family? I'll never understand. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been a week since the last update. Yesterday we decided to apply for a restraining order against Sharon and Diane because they did something to me, or rather tried to do something to me. It was Thursday, and I usually stop by the coffee shop near the office to treat myself to a frappuccino as a little snack. Last Thursday I was about to do just that when, as soon as I entered, Diane and Sharon left the seats they had been waiting for me to sit in and walked straight towards me with the coffees in their hands. Before I could react, they splashed the coffees in my face, and Diane then grabbed some cream from the cups and ladled it out onto my hair. I was stunned and my whole body froze. I stood still and motionless, and it was only after a while that the baristas came to help me clean up. They did their best to make sure everything was removed. I am very grateful to them because they really gave up their work to help me. While I tried to wipe everything off my clothes, other customers who had been waiting patiently also helped me. The clothes were sticky and uncomfortable, and my hair was disgusting, but after I washed it, I felt much cleaner. Some other customers confirmed that I was fine, and one of them asked me if I wanted to call the police, which I did, and reported Diane and Sharon. I sued them, but they only got a slap on the wrist because it was a misdemeanor and there was no real harm done, unless you were referring to my clothes that day, which I couldn't wear to work anymore because the coffee stains had faded and were all over the front. Despite this, we pressed charges and filed a report, which helped the case. Sean wanted to make the incident public and post it on social media to warn others away from Diane and his mom, but changed his mind when he realized I just wanted to put the whole thing behind us. To be honest, that incident shocked me. I know it sounds silly, but it really got me thinking that if things get worse, then they might not just throw coffee in my face, they might seriously hurt me because they know my daily activities on social media and they know my address, so things could get really bad. Sean and I had a good financial year, so we were already thinking about moving house, and now that this has happened, we definitely will. We were also thinking about having children, and we were going to start trying soon, but my in-laws will never meet my children. After the coffee incident, my father-in-law refused to intervene, so we cut him off. Sean had a big fight with him and then cut him off too. I'm relieved that I don't have to hear from these people anymore.